Imagine crouching in a pitch-black cellar beneath the British Parliament. It's the cold, damp night of November 4th, 1605. Around you are 36 massive barrels of gunpowder, hidden under a giant pile of firewood. You have a pocket watch, a lantern, and a slow-burning match in your hand. One spark, and you will wipe out the king, his ministers, and the entire English government. Your finger is on the trigger of the most devastating terror plot in history. Suddenly, heavy boots echo on the stone steps above. The door swings open. Guards burst in. You're caught. But here's the twist. The man caught in that cellar wasn't the mastermind. And the government might have known he was there all along. For over 400 years, the world has remembered this man, Guy Fawkes. We burn his effigy. We light fireworks, and we remember the 5th of November.
But Fawkes was just the hired muscle, the military explosives expert.
The real brain behind this lethal conspiracy was a charismatic, wealthy Catholic gentleman named Robert Catesby. Catesby wasn't looking for minor reforms. He wanted a total violent reboot of the English state. And to understand why, we have to look at a broken royal promise. For decades, English Catholics had lived in the shadows. Under Queen Elizabeth, practicing Catholic Mass was illegal, and priests were hunted down. So, when Elizabeth died, and King James I took the throne in 1603, Catholics held their breath. James's own mother had been a Catholic. He promised tolerance. But the hope didn't last. Pressure from Protestant hardliners. Forced James to double down. The fines returned. The banishment of priests resumed. For Catesby and his circle, the realization was bitter. Peaceful change was impossible. Catesby gathered a tight-knit group of 13 conspirators. Their plan was shockingly modern in its brutality. They didn't want to just assassinate the king. They wanted to obliterate the entire political class at the state opening of Parliament. Once the palace lay in ruins, they would spark a massive Catholic uprising. In the English Midlands, kidnap the king's 9-year-old daughter, Princess Elizabeth, and put her on the throne as a puppet queen. The stakes were absolute, total victory or a traitor's gruesome death on the gallows. But how do you blow up a palace? First, they tried digging a tunnel, but it was too slow and dangerous. Then, a stroke of incredible luck, or so they thought. One of the conspirators managed to rent a vaulted cellar directly beneath the House of Lords. Over several months, under the cover of darkness, they boated 36 barrels of gunpowder. Across the River Thames, they packed them into the cellar, covering them with iron bars and tons of firewood. Fawkes, using the alias John Johnson, slept in the vault, guarding the deadly cargo. As the date was set for November 5th, the tension was suffocating. One loose word, one suspicious look, and everything would vanish. Then, on October 26th, a strange letter arrived. It was delivered anonymously to Lord Monteagle, a Catholic member of Parliament. The letter contained a chilling warning. Devise some excuse to shift your attendance, for they shall receive a terrible blow instead of keeping quiet. Monteagle took the letter straight to the king's chief minister and spy master, Sir Robert Cecil. Here's where the history gets dark and calculating. Cecil didn't order an immediate raid. Instead, he waited. He let the conspiracy mature. He even waited for King James to return from a hunting trip before showing him the warning. Why? Because Cecil wanted to catch them red-handed with the match in their hands, maximize the political damage to the Catholic cause. At midnight on November 4th, the guards finally swept the cellars. They found Fawkes.
Within hours, he was in the Tower of London.
For 2 days, Fawkes refused to talk. But James I ordered him to be tortured on the rack. The gentler tortures first, and so by degrees to the worst. Broken and shattered, Fawkes eventually signed his confession. Meanwhile, Catesby and the other plotters fled to the Midlands. They tried to raise their Catholic rebellion, but nobody joined them. Trapped at Holbecky House by government forces, A dramatic shootout began. Catesby was shot dead, clutching an image of the Virgin Mary. The survivors were dragged back to London, tried, and brutally executed, hanged, drawn, and quartered. So who wrote the mysterious letter that ruined it all? While the letter was anonymous, most historians point to Francis Tresham.
One of the last conspirators to join the group, Lord Monteagle was his brother-in-law.
Tresham likely wanted to save his relative's life without betraying his friends. Instead, his warning doomed them all. For centuries, a persistent conspiracy theory has lingered. Did the government invent the entire plot? Some argue that Robert Cecil was the ultimate puppet master, luring these Catholics into a trap. But reliable historical records, including the confessions, and the sheer scale of the gunpowder smuggled tell us otherwise. The plot was absolutely real. However, Cecil's brilliance or ruthlessness was in how he used it. He didn't invent the fire, but he certainly let it burn until it perfectly served his purpose. The failure of the Gunpowder Plot changed the course of British history. Instead of restoring Catholicism, it cemented Protestant rule for centuries. King James used the public's terror to pass draconian anti-Catholic laws, stripping them of their civil rights. And it created a national myth. To this day, the state opening of Parliament begins with a ceremonial search of the cellars. But it leaves us with a haunting question. Catesby and Fawkes believed they were fighting a holy war against a tyrannical regime. If that anonymous letter had never been delivered and those 36 barrels had ignited, would we remember them as liberators? Or would Britain have plunged into a dark, bloody civil war, decades ahead of its time?
What do you think?